Starfinder's Envoy is the ultimate leadership class by encouraging their teammate with specific directives they can follow for bonuses, while also being a fully trained combatant themselves who can follow their own directives for those bonuses. The Envoy is a really fun charisma-based class that you can take in a ton of different directions. Howdy, my name is Nonat and welcome to my guide to the Envoy in the Starfinder playtest. Just like my Witch Warper guide, if you haven't already seen it, I am going to be only going over the level 1 aspects of the Envoy. I'm not going to make a full deep dive into this because it's just the playtest. When the game officially comes out next year, that's when you'll get the hour-long guides. But by the end of this video, you're going to know everything you need to know to make a level 1 Envoy, from their proficiencies to their level 1 class features, and because they're not a spellcaster, their level 1 feats. So let's get into it. But first, this video is sponsored... I see you scrubbing that bar down there. I tricked you. It's not actually a sponsorship. I lied. No, I'm just here to say that if you're watching this the day it comes out, I will be live streaming the following day, Wednesday the 14th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, whatever time zone you're in. I hate time zones. I now have friends all over the world and it gets confusing. But it's also kind of cool to say I have friends all over the world. This stream is going to be two things. First, it's going to be skimming the playtest and going over things that people want me to look at and go over, maybe look at some of the more specific feats for some of the classes, but it's also going to be your chance to ask me questions about Starfinder. Just yesterday, at the time of recording this, I played through and GM'd my first Starfinder one-shot, and it was a lot of fun. I've got some gripes, I've got some really cool things I loved to see. So if you have any questions about Starfinder, come onto the stream tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and ask me any questions you would like, and we're also just going to look through the playtest together, talk about what's cool and what's not. I hope to see you there. Also, while I'm here, shout out to all of the members of the Nonat1's Patreon page. I appreciate all of you for supporting me and my content. If you'd like to join them, there's a link in the description where you can pledge for $10 a month to get your name on that list alongside all the other generous people. Appreciate y'all so freaking much. Let's talk Envoy. As I said, the Envoy is a charisma-based class with 8 hit points plus their con modifier per level. This is a really interesting take because obviously charisma is important to leadership, but the Envoy is also an active combatant in combat, which will lead you to be a little bit multi-ability dependent. If you want to be really good with a gun, you might actually opt for going 16 dex, 16 charisma, rather than going all in on 18 charisma, because as we'll see, the charisma is not super important to what the Envoy actually does in combat. The Envoy begins the game trained in perception checks and trained in fortitude saves, but they are expert in both reflex and will saves. The Envoy is also Starfinder's skill junkie, beginning the game with 6 skills of your choice on top of an additional skill from your subclass on top of either diplomacy, intimidation, or deception as an extra free skill, and then plus your intelligence modifier, whatever that may be. You could start with upwards of 9 or 10 skills, even more counting your background, on your Envoy if you have a high enough intelligence. Even with 0 intelligence, that's like a minimum of 9 skill proficiencies after your background. They're trained in both simple and martial weapons, however they are restricted to only light armor, and of course trained in the Envoy class DC. And I'm going to keep saying this because enough people playing Pathfinder 2e and Starfinder 2e keep forgetting this exists, but on every single class it says attribute boosts. So don't forget your 4 free boosts you get to apply to your character after your ancestry background in class. The first and primary feature of the Envoy are their directives. These are unique actions that only Envoys can take, and you start with one of them, known as Get 'em. A directive is a really cool feature that for one action, you just issue you and any allies who can see you a directive, or if you choose to, you can give this the auditory trait to make it a verbal command for any ally that can hear you. If you're all in magical darkness, you can switch it to auditory, and your allies will still benefit even if they're blinded. Directives have 2 different effects. There is the first effect that your allies will gain if they do the corresponding action. For example, Get 'em rewards your allies for attacking a specific enemy target. But all directives also come with a lead by example bonus, where if you, the Envoy, follow your own directive after announcing it, you get a personal bonus. And that bonus can actually sometimes spread to the rest of your party. Let's look at the base directive Get 'em for an example of this. Get 'em says for one action, pick a creature within 60 feet from you that you can see. That creature just takes a -1 circumstance penalty to armor class and reflex saves until the start of your next turn. Already, that's phenomenal. This is akin to the Pathfinder Bard's Courageous Anthem giving everybody +1 to hit, but instead, this is giving one enemy -1 to armor. Now, once you've done this, you can go about your business, your allies will gain that benefit, but if you choose to lead by example and follow your own directive to get that specific target, well hey, you get +1 plus half your charisma modifier in bonus damage against that target this turn, and as long as you attempt to shoot that target, all of your allies get a flat +1 to damage rolls against that target. This damage scales up at levels 5, 10, 15, and 20, only going up by 1 damage each, but even right at level 1, that's pretty good. If you, and let's say you're in a party of 4, you all hit them once after you say get them, well, you just did probably 2 bonus damage, and everybody else is going to deal 1 bonus damage. That's 5 bonus damage just for using Get 'em, as well as reducing their armor class. And don't forget, if they happen to critically hit because you lowered their armor class, that bonus damage you're getting is also doubled. If you've got a +4 to charisma and you use this, that's 3 bonus damage on your hit, total of 6 bonus damage if you critically hit on top of your weapon's crit damage. Fantastic. What I've actually seen happen in gameplay during the one-shot is an Envoy saying, "Hey, everybody, get him!" and then shooting them and killing the target, and there's nobody left to get. The next Envoy feature is definitely the most complicated for the least reward. It is your social mastermind feature. Let me sum all of this up in just a few sentences. You pick a target. That target becomes your asset. You get +1 to deception, intimidation, diplomacy, and perception checks against that target, and if you ever go into combat against that target who is your asset, as a free action, you get to get a +1 bonus to your initiative roll, and as a free action, draw a weapon, stride, or step. And you also get +1 to recall knowledge about your asset. And you can have a number of different assets at one time equal to your charisma modifier. That's all simple enough to follow, you just get some minor bonuses against a target. Where this gets complicated is how you pick your target. This isn't a simple hunt-prey situation, no. At minimum, it is going to take you 1 minute to designate a target as your asset. And that's only if you can directly observe your target. If you're in a crowded bar and you can see the bandit you're here to assassinate in the corner, you can watch them for a minute and they become your asset. But if you don't have sight on them, you have 2 other options. One is to surf the literal Starfinder internet called the Infosphere for information on your target, or you can ask around locally to find information about your target. If you use the Infosphere, it's going to be 10 minutes. If you ask locally, it's going to be an hour. But you cannot use those 2 options unless you already know at least 2 pieces of your target's identity. I told you this was complicated. The GM determines what is and isn't viable enough to be considered identity information, but the examples they give are their name, their address, where they work, the organizations they're affiliated with, anyone they're related to, that kind of thing. So if you can find the person's brother and their place of work, and then hang around there for an hour to gather information, you can make this guy your asset, and you might gain information during that as well. Now, these bonuses can actually apply to more than just your asset target. In fact, you can use these bonuses on anything that might relate to the asset. So if you are interrogating somebody for the location of your asset at present time, you actually will still get that +1 to intimidation against the person you are interrogating. No clue why this is so complicated for the Envoy, but there you have it. It's like Hunt Prey with a lot of extra steps. Now we get to the really big choice, your Envoy subclass, the leadership style. This is going to give you a few different benefits, including a skill proficiency, a level 1 perk, and a level 6 perk. A lot of these perks involve giving you free feats, often skill feats. I'm not going to go over them in this video, but I will put them on screen while I'm talking about them so you can at least see what they do. Now, the level 6 perk for each of these subclasses functions really interestingly. They are new ways to lead by example. No matter what directive you gave, like with Get 'em, you don't have to shoot the target of Get 'em if you have the 6th level perk of your leadership style. Just as an example showcasing the From the Front subclass, anytime you raise a shield or take a move to move within an enemy's reach, that also counts as leading by example, which would grant all of your allies the damage bonus of Get 'em, even though you didn't do what Get 'em says. I hope that made sense. It's really easy to understand in concept, but hard to explain. You can use any number of directives per turn, but you can only use your leadership style to lead by example once per turn. Starting off with From the Front leadership style, you choose to rush in and be right up in there with the soldiers and Solarians. You become trained in athletics as well as trained in medium armor. And anytime your light armor proficiency would increase, it also increases your medium armor proficiency. This is just a nice way if you're gonna be on the front lines, you don't need to worry about your dexterity nearly as much. You can sneak in a couple 2 or 3 more points of armor class while tanking your own dex score. And once they're level 6, they can lead by example anytime they raise their shield or use a move action to move into an enemy's reach. The From the Shadows leadership is probably super self-explanatory. Don't get seen. You of course become trained in stealth, but you also gain assurance for stealth, meaning at any time you can just choose not to roll your dice to sneak and just take 10 plus your stealth bonus instead. And you can lead by example anytime you hide, sneak, or take cover, which is fantastic, especially in Starfinder's very typically ranged combat-focused encounters. Guns Blazing leadership style, you choose to encourage your comrades by blowing people's heads off. You become trained in acrobatics and gain incredible initiative as a bonus feat. And at level 6, you can lead by example anytime you A, make a ranged attack that includes a multiple attack penalty, so any shot after your first in a round, B, whenever you reload a ranged weapon, or C, if you use a ranged weapon that has area fire or auto fire, 2 new types of ranged weapons specific to Starfinder. In the spotlight, you like all the attention to be on you, and you use that attention to encourage your allies. You become trained in performance and gain the incredible performance feat. I think I said you gain that feat. And at level 6, they can lead by example in possibly the most insane way of any subclass. Anytime you perform, you lead by example, but you can lead by example by issuing another directive. So whatever directive you give first, when you give your second directive, you auto-give the lead by example bonus of the first directive, and then you can just do the lead by example of the second directive as written, and you can get 2 directives plus the lead by example bonuses. That's wild to me. The Hotshot leadership style is definitely designed for a specific type of campaign that is really not supported by the playtest. I honestly don't quite know why they included this in here, because we don't have rules for vehicles yet. You gain piloting as a skill proficiency and express driver as a skill feat, but at level 6, the only way you can lead by example, aside from the as written rules, is by driving, taking control of the vehicle, or performing a stunt in your vehicle. If you're in the middle of a vehicular combat, that's freaking cool. Otherwise, this is useless, and we don't have rules for vehicles yet. We have the Pathfinder rules for vehicles, which are clunky, but they work. But I feel like Starfinder's gonna have its own totally new rules for vehicles, and they're not in the playtest, so I wouldn't recommend this subclass as is right now. Infosphere Director. You're a nerd, but a nerd who's very good at using Google. You become trained in computers and gain the Digital Diversion bonus feat. And at level 6, you can lead by example by recalling knowledge, which is phenomenal, and of course creating a diversion with computers, which sounds specific, but remember it's Starfinder, it's the future, and everything is computers. And finally, the Through Desperate Times leadership style is cool because you are both the captain effectively and the party medic. You become trained in medicine, you get battle medicine right at level 1, and then at level 6 you can lead by example by administering first aid, using battle medicine, or just by using a healing item on an ally. Just go ahead and stock up on healing items and you can heal your allies and grant them lead by example bonuses. Just fantastic. And like I said, the Envoy is not a spellcaster, so they get a first level feat, so we're going to go over all of the first level Envoy feats here to close out the video. Acquire asset is useful? Question mark? Asterisk? Upside down smiley face? For one action, you make a melee or ranged strike against the target, and if you hit them, they become your asset, which isn't that helpful. There are a couple feats at higher levels that can make you a little more effective against your asset in combat, but where acquire asset is really most useful is using it before combat starts. If a firefight is unavoidable, you might as well make the first shot, and if you do, the target can become your asset before initiative is rolled, allowing you as a free action, because you are now engaging your asset, 2, get a +1 to initiative, draw your weapon, which is already out at this point, or step or stride as a free action as part of initiative. Otherwise, making a target your asset in the middle of combat, aside from getting, I guess, the +1 to demoralize, is not that important. At least you can recall knowledge as a free action if you critically hit them, and because they're now your asset, you get +1 to that. Diverse schemes. You can have a number of assets equal to twice your charisma modifier. Do I think there's a world where you need 6 assets? Probably not. But if you're pulling off some kind of big space bank heist, then maybe having a lot of the different employees, like the security captain and the CEO and the teller and all of them all as your assets before going in, might be worth it. Pardon Me is absolutely phenomenal. You do need to be trained in deception, but when you use Tumble Through, you can roll deception instead of acrobatics, and if you succeed while doing so, the target becomes suppressed until the end of its next turn, which, by the way, suppressed, if you're unaware, is a new condition in Starfinder. It gives the target -1 to all attack rolls and -5 foot to all speeds, not just land speed, flight, swim, climb, anything. It just becomes worth it to use one action on each of your turns, just awkwardly scooch by the target every single round to give them -1 to attack rolls. That's wild. Quip. If you're trained in intimidation, then as a reaction, if an enemy within 30 feet of you is struck and damaged by an enemy, you can demoralize them. Is this that powerful? Depends. There are ways this is useful that can make the frightened condition last a little bit longer than if you had demoralized them on your turn, but overall, this isn't that fantastic. Take 'em Alive is the only other directive available at level 1, and it's a really cool one. For one action, you and all of your allies can attack one specific target for non-lethal damage without taking the -2 penalty from using lethal weapons. This even makes spells non-lethal as long as they don't have the death or void traits. That's wild to me and super cool. Additionally, if you lead by example by attacking the target that you've said to get them alive, then they take the -1 circumstance penalty to armor class and reflex saves as though you had also used Get 'em on them. You just do not get the Get 'em lead by example benefit. Super cool. I love anything that encourages players to leave targets alive to get information rather than just outright killing every creature they see. And the final level 1 feat here I think is a great example of Starfinder's slightly increased power level compared to Pathfinder 2e. It's not that crazy much powerful, but having played a one-shot, and maybe it was just my experience, damage is higher and abilities overall are a bit more impactful on the classes. Watch Out is a great example of that. As a reaction, if an ally within 60 feet of you would be attacked, you can just give them +2 to armor class. This is the Rogue's Nimble Dodge from Pathfinder, but you can give it to any ally except obviously yourself because you're not your own ally. This is so much more flexible than Nimble Dodge. They're both level 1 feats on a mainly just combat-based class, but this is just fantastic. Especially, like I said, with Starfinder being mostly ranged combat, having a 60-foot range +2 armor class reaction when you're not using your reactions on anything else is just almost unbeatable, to the point where I think you'd be making a quote-unquote wrong choice picking any of these other level 1 feats if you're purely min-maxing. Obviously there's way more flavor in some of the other feats, but if you're just going for most frequently universally helpful min-max best feat, it's Watch Out by a landslide. But it's a playtest, and maybe things will be a little bit more balanced in the future. I think even if this said give +1 to AC to one ally within 60 feet, this would still be a great feat. But I'd love to hear what you think, because we have gone over every single level 1 aspect of the Starfinder 2e. Oh my god, I can't talk. It's the end of the video. That's all I'm really trying to say. Be sure to come by at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time tomorrow, Wednesday the 14th, as we're going over the Starfinder playtest live and answering some Q&A about people who are curious about the game after my little experience running a one-shot. Would love to see you there. It's sure to be a lot of fun. I'll be streaming for probably about 2 to 4 hours, depending on how it goes. That's all from me. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no Nat 1.